How do we make this thing work? And action.
Hey, how are you?
What's up, Kevin Peterly?
How's it going?
It's good to meet you, man.
Yeah, likewise.
A friend of mine had that very same hutch, I think.
Had the what?
Same hutch behind you, the bright red one.
Oh, yeah.
That's always been one of my favorite colors.
Nice. Yeah, me too.
Where do you live, Kevin?
Downtown.
Really?
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
Fifth and Spring.
Fifth and Spring, right
Yeah.
downtown.
Yeah. How about you?
Culver City.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, I've been downtown. I know your area pretty well.
Yeah.
It's been pretty hard to be there in COVID days. A lot of restaurants closed. Not much walking opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, I try to kind of do stuff like early in the morning and, like when it's not crowded outside. But, I mean, I don't know. I feel a lot worse for the people who are, were on the street before. And, now that there's a pandemic, there's nowhere for them to go,
Yeah, and I think you could feel that a
Yeah.
lot in your neighborhood,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, and it was always bad, but like it's kind of taken on like a new dimension of tragedy, like knowing just
Yeah, people are exposed even more than they were before.
Right.
Yeah, it's downtown LA has been undergoing such an interesting transformation over the last 5 to 10 years, I guess 10. And the homeless people are getting pushed out a lot in areas that they used to be able to, move about freely, and have all the gentrification, especially in the arts district, I guess. And
yeah, I mean, it's interesting because my family's been in LA for forever, for a very long time, and I remember we would come down to downtown every once in a while in the early, mid 90s, and it was such a different place. And in some ways it was worse, right? Like it was not vibrant. It was people only worked here, no one lived here. But as it gentrified, as it happens to a lot of communities, eventually the needs of the priorities of the community are not really met, and kind of moneyed interest sort of comes in, and it's like doesn't really have to be like that, right? Like, like we could have laws that like allow for zoning of large buildings, that's affordable housing. Like we could insist on that. So, it's been, I think, a rough couple months with the pandemic. I think a lot of people are realizing that.
Yeah, I think it is. And particularly it's palpable downtown.
Which I think, honestly, like that was why when Christine told me about Galora, I was like, it's like a small piece, but you realize that like building community is like really the way that you actually change these things. And I think that Galora has that kind of behind it, which is why I thought it was such an intriguing idea, right? Because it's about creating, like LA is not known for its neighborly, whatever, but it's about fostering that community in a digital world, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, where do you come from that you have this appreciation? What's your story?
Well, I grew up here. I grew up in Thousand Oaks, actually, so kind of the suburbs. But my family lived here in LA before they moved for my dad's work. And they had lived, my family, they lived in the South Bay prior to that. But I think it's like, so I work in public service, and we're having our own kind of, organizational like reckoning about like how have we fallen short and where can we do better. And I'm trying to look at things through a little bit different of a lens, and try to figure out how I can use my sphere of influence to kind of course correct a little bit.
Right. And that's amazing, and you bring so much interesting backstory and experience to the project. And like Christine, is that how you know her, through work?
Yeah, that's how I met Christine. We worked together for many years, and actually, like, we had talked about that kind of stuff on our lunch break forever. But obviously, this COVID pandemic has, I think, really brought it just to like the fore, and so now there's a different sense of urgency, I think, in like acting upon it. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that it's forced a reckoning, as you call it, in all of our lives, and in no matter what you did before. Everyone has to reassess like who we are and what we value, and what's missing. from our daily lives.
Yeah.
So you and Christine are both, are you in the same area? She really seems to be trying to create opportunities for better food access
Yeah, she's basically now on the other side of our work. So before, for example, in our role before, like I give out money to like Christine's organization, an organization like Christine. So like now she's the one asking her previous job for money, basically. So like that's kind of the dynamic shift now.
Yeah.
But also really good because like there's a lot of opportunities for us to be able to make those kind of connections, I think, in a new and different way now. So
yeah, it's great. I mean, she really inspired me when I spoke to her about the kind of work that she does, and if anything, having opened myself up to talk to thousands of people, and since this happened, I've really been so inspired by the kinds of values, the kinds of hard work, the kinds of aspirational activities that so many of our neighbors are engaged in. And I personally started to wonder what had taken me so long to try to make a difference, outside of my own life and outside of my own, immediate network. And I think that I'm so, normal in that sense that, everybody is being forced to sort of reassess what matters to them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned like wondering what had taken you so long, and I think a lot of people are realizing that and feeling like, oh man, I fell short a little bit, and like, yes, that sucks, and like that's your own personal work that you have to do to grapple with that. But I think it's also important to know that like it doesn't do you any help to dwell on what you did wrong before, but like now you recognize it, so now just do better. Like that's how you fix that. Like that's how you move forward from it. It's not about like, yes, acknowledge, apologize for like whatever your role was in the past, but like then just like show by your actions that like you're committed to doing it differently. Like that's all there is to it, and that is something that we all can do with like no added effort on our part, really.
It's like a redirection of our energies. And I think that people have more time, as well as an openness and a receptiveness.
Right.
I think it comes from vulnerability.
Yeah, I think it's like both time and I think the realization that like community is more than just being physically present next to someone, and that you can create community. Like I think sometimes we frame technology as something that makes us very insular and avoid, but like it doesn't actually have to. Like you can create community that just looks a little bit different than maybe it used to look, but like it actually is still based on like mutually aligned interests or something that unites you, but it just may not take place physically together. But you can actually create a much bigger community online than you can when you have limitations, so there's just like so much opportunity that I think we don't always, really take in that space to show that like there can be an individual one-on-one component in an online engagement like that. I mean, I think social media like kind of used to be that many, many years ago, and it kind of evolved into this mess, and I'm like,
like a mess of vacuousness and self-adulation and showing
right. And like it was always about sharing, like it was about sharing pictures for sure, but like it wasn't about like the enforcing, I don't know, feedback mechanism of liking it, and it was more like a way of showing your friends, like, and staying up to date, even if you were going to college at a different college from your hometown friend, like the nature has changed so much.
Yeah, and I think that's what it was, and still is to some degree.
Yeah.
A medium for satisfying a basic human need,
right,
to be connected in whatever way we can. Whatever, it's a pretty sad replacement, but better than nothing. And has had some unintended consequences.
For sure.
Taking pictures of yourself, doing everything, and taking a picture of your plates, and maybe even having I don't know, like image consultants for your own personal Facebook. I think like everybody in one way or the other you know, despite our spoken antipathy for that kind of behavior, has fall into it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't know, I think it's a slippery slope. But you're definitely speaking to something that matters to me a lot.
Yeah.
And what you're saying about technology doesn't have to be bad.
Yeah.
Because it's taken on a stigma, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's taken on this because it's become so Instagrammy and so Facebooky that those things are now catchphrases for vanity.
Yeah.
When, you know, it's sad that that's happened. But it is still a vital tool, like electricity.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you look and see, like look how it's been able to organize people around issues like Black Lives Matter, and like you can see, and look how fast things started to change. Like you saw like actual meaningful consequences of direct action, and like that can be how you use digital tools to build community in a very productive way, right? Like to help each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly empowering. It's powerful and empowering both to have a platform where good can spread, and virality, doesn't always have to be a cat meme or somebody getting hit in the nuts, but it can actually be a good idea, something that resonates and speaks to our shared humanity and our goals for a better world. And I think that's, if anything, Galora, I think, has a certain element of moving on its own potential.
Mm-hmm.
Do you hear what I'm saying with that?
Yeah.
I mean, tell me what your experience is, what your thoughts were. We can do this later, because I don't know if I mentioned to you about the documentary.
I think you just had mentioned that something about documentary, but
yeah, I thought I'd talk to you about it in person, but this is such a great conversation. Maybe we can just have it here and then have it again in person.
Yeah.
Galore has become a story-driven platform.
Right.
A lot to the points that we spoke about before, that it's really not transactional or merchandise-based. It's really it's taken on an esoteric, ethereal quality that is doing much more than allowing a product to change hands. And I hope that you've had some degree of contact with that. This is, none of my making. It's humanity, I think, interpreting the platform as an opening to be better somehow.
Yeah.
And so anyway, right, so story driven. So that's really what happened, is that, as we began to explore the different avenues for getting the idea about Galora into different hands,
mm-hmm.
What came out of it was that, you can try to pitch a platform, you could try to pitch a concept, but it's pretty hollow,
mm-hmm.
and difficult for people to truly embrace, or at
mm-hmm.
least to conceive of the possibilities. So once you break it down, it's transactional, its technical capacity, it doesn't make sense. And it's not that it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't, elicit any truly.
That's not the innovative part about it.
Yes, there's something happening between the coded lines.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why that I get tingles, and the people who tell me their stories get tingles, that it was not expected, and this was this was not planned. And so the idea is to tell the story, well, to talk about Galore by telling the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get a lot of more palpable connections that resonate with people at a deeper level, and then truly communicate the mission, instead of me standing on a stage, or me doing videos. My baby really likes ice.
Yeah.
I regret the day I taught her the word. There you go. Here's the mic. So as we began talking about how to communicate the message, it became clearer and clearer that talking about the platform, what didn't work. And so we needed, it's not that it didn't work, but it wasn't probably the best way. And the next thing had to happen is let the people tell their stories themselves, by locating the people who have been moved, by locating the people who have had a positive experience, however briefly, tell the story and the potential of Galora much better than I could, or a press release.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what we decided to do was to make a movie,
Okay.
a documentary for Amazon, hopefully. That will basically be an series of interviews that will be strung together in some kind of a coherent way, with some kind of a coherent arc, with some kind of a anticipated finality that really, I think, as much as is possible with a website that launched, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I am in awe about how many stories have already come out of it.
Yeah.
That my dream, or our vision now, is to capture as many of those on film, giving everybody the opportunity to tell their own story, including their backstory. Right? It's I don't want it to be a commercial. Just talk about you and talk about what you've done before and what happened to you and how you think that maybe it could be meaningful. And everybody who's participated so far, we've done 10 videos so far, 10 interviews. And every single time I get tingles, and I can't believe that I'm hearing the things that I'm hearing, and the way the people are connecting with not just the site, because it's almost like an afterthought. It's it's not that it's like I would do this even if we turned the platform off tomorrow, because the stories that these people have taken away, are so much more meaningful than anything that the site could do or is really intended to do. Like the fact that it's already given somebody hope. It's already given someone a human connection to another person that they didn't know before. Maybe bridging some kind of a cultural, racial, or economic divide.
Yeah, I think, well, I was just going to say, like, that, I feel like what you just said is actually, like, the core of, have you seen Padma Lakshmi's new show on Hulu? But it's about American cuisine, and it's about, like, the backstory behind it a little bit, right? So it gets into, like, the intersection of, like, food, culture, politics, right? And it's, like, it's very much about immigrants. But I feel like what, in my mind, Galora at its best is like, I think the embodiment of like the American spirit at its like purest, like most good part, which is like you connect with people who are very different from you, but you're both like trying to create some, I mean, like, because that under optimal conditions, I feel like is what America is supposed to be about. It's about that, like, we're from totally different places. We're from different places in LA. Tweet, you're from Vietnam and I'm from here. And like us finding something that we shared in common, which is, for her, a love of nature, and for me, a love of baking. And like our ability to like, like that is the story about like, I think what the American experiment is supposed to be, right? Like we're in this together to do something bigger.
Yes, it is. And see, what you just said there is the reason I want to talk to you, and what can happen based, and also your own, what you bring to it, right? It's like your experience could have come from anywhere else, but you come from a career, a dedication. You made a choice to go into public service, and now you've seen a platform which could have been any other platform doing something deeper, something more meaningful, having more potential. I spoke with somebody yesterday who lived in South Central. She's a white woman who lived in South Central for 15 years, trying to build communities, try to bridge divides, learning about otherness, learning about inequalities and disparities in so many different ways. And she was very moved by Galora and helped me in the early days to identify our mission and to make sure that it was encompassing of everyone and everything. Of course, if you had asked me, I would have said yes, but I had never had the opportunity to articulate it or to even consider it until she came about and called me out in the most generous, kind, willing way about something that may or may not have been inclusive. And it struck a conversation and sparked a conversation that became a relationship, became a friendship, and also shaped the way that Galore is going to be forever. And I was speaking to her yesterday in her interview, and she was mentioning how she has a plot in a community garden, and she says there's 25 plots here. and every one of them are from different cultures. You know, so you have the Vietnamese, the Chinese, the Latinos, the Mexicans, the El Salvadorians, the Vietnamese, and if you look at them, they're growing different food in each one of those plots, and the way it's made, structured, laid out is all different.
Yeah.
And I said, what a beautiful analogy. But she didn't make the connection. She's telling me this wonderful story. And I said, that is what Galora is.
Right.
It's the opportunity for everyone to plot out their identity as who they represent and who they truly are, and to connect.
Yeah.
Also, the way the community garden is, because if those two gardeners happen to be there the same day, you know, oh, that's a nice calamansi you have there, or what is that you have, right? Yeah. What is that you're growing? It's a calamansi. It's from the Philippines. It's a citrus. You can use it on chicken. Oh, I didn't know that. And what's that you're holding there? It's a cucumber. And what's that for? You know, and now you have people talking about something so fundamental to them, you know, food, nutrition, their passion. Now people are talking about their history and their identities in a non-threatening, non-transactional way. And I said, that is what's happening already. And what I hope Galore will be, this gigantic American tapestry and eventually a global one that represents everyone, and they all meet on the same playing ground with the same appreciation that we are also different, you know, and maybe we'll start putting flags, you know, so that people can say, this is a Mexican list. This is a Portuguese one, you know, and I'm from Vietnam.
Yeah.
I mean, how beautiful is that, you know? And the potential of that is truly, it's mind-boggling. And you know, I had some aspirations of people making friends, but I mean, this is the conversation that's happening now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty amazing. So this chat has been great. And I recorded it. So
yeah, of course, that's fine. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't get a chance to mention it. So you know, we might pull parts from this, but I would love to meet you in person. And to do this again, and we'll just chit chat, and it'll basically be a different style because this is more conversational. And later on, it'll be like the you know, we'll sit down someplace you like, you know, a neutral ground. I guess you're downtown, so maybe like, you know, somewhere quiet. It'll be kind of hard, I guess. Yeah. Virgin Square is not exactly the quietest place to hang out, probably. But we can talk about that. Yeah. And maybe, you know what, what's good that if you wanted to do it is that where the train tracks are, you know, this north of Grand Central, or is that what they call the station there?
Union Station.
Union, yeah. Thinking New York. Union Station. There's like that big park. But one thing I didn't want to get you that in the storytelling and in our attempts to interest different media to write an article about Galora, I gave my publicist the stories. You know, this is what happened today, and this is what this person told me, and your story, at least as I know it, about. Well, I'm gonna let you tell it, right? Yeah. So I told my publicist my only Tui's version, right? So I only know Tui's side. And he says, okay, I'm talking to X writer at X magazine, and she's really, really interested in the passion fruit story.
Oh, how cool.
I think so too. And I think he's like, so can you tell me how it went and what happened? And I was like, okay, this is what I understand from my half of it. But, you know, to truly get the whole story, I need to talk.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, put me in touch or however you want. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you could just tell me now, and then we can revisit it in the audio.
So the way it kind of worked is like, as I mentioned, I worked with Christine for a long time. We worked on the same team, and then we were not part of the same team, but we used to have lunch together every single day, and like we would talk about like these same things I just shared with you, like. Because we are in this, you know, public space trying to like solve very complicated problems in a like, you know, complex government bureaucracy, and like that was sort of our lens, right? Like we're like public servants and like trying to do good and motivated by good, but you know, it's challenging, like, right? And and Christine loves food. Like, she's the executive director now of the Food Policy Council, but like, she loves food, and she loves food from all of its aspects, right? Like, from the, did you know that this vegetable like came from this? And did you know that X, Y, and Z indigenous tribe is the one? Like, she is just like the queen of food facts, right? And Christine knows that I like to bake and like whatever. And I was like, Christine, and because I know Christine is a food queen, I was like, Christine, I really want passion fruit. I love passion fruit. And the only place I know where they sell it is Ralph's. And when I go there, it's like $5 a passion fruit. But I was like, but I do know that passion fruit is like a backyard crop in LA. And I was like, and I know that like they are plentiful. And I just don't know, I'm a millennial. So I don't know anyone who owns a home, let alone a home that has a, you know, passion fruit plant on it. And she was like, oh, have you, like, you should look at Twee's passion fruits on Galora. And I was like, what is this? She's like, oh, I just found out about it. It's called Galora. She's like, yeah, you should like take a look. And I was like, oh my God, Twee is selling passion fruits for like nothing. This is exactly what I'm looking for, because like, I want to indulge this craving, but I'm not willing to spend it. Like, in my mind, it was like the equivalent of like spending $5 for a lemon in LA. Like, that's crazy. Like, when I know that I can just go to someone's backyard or off their fence, and like, to me, that is something that I remember about living in LA. Like, and my family's been in LA for over 100 years. My grandparents had an avocado tree. We had a lemon tree and an orange tree, and like, and you just get that kind of stuff. And to me, that was like what Twee was offering, right? So that was what intrigued me. And I was so grateful, and I was like, oh my God, I got this huge bag of passion fruits, and I paid her like $15 for it. And I was like, I'm gonna make all these things with it. I'm gonna put it in the freezer. Oh, this is so great. And after I finished it, I just said like, Twee, do you wanna try some of what I made? Like, I'm so excited to have found a source for this. I wanna share it with you. So that was kind of how like that story played out. I think you're on mute.
Okay, yeah, sorry. How many passion fruits did you get from Tui?
Oh God, it had to have been like 40 or 50.
40 or 50 at $5 a piece.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was crazy. And I was like, and obviously I never would have bought 40 or 50, but I was like, oh my God, if she has 40 to 50 to spare and is going to pay $4 a pound, I will take her up on that.
Ooh, then I hope you gave her a lot of creme brulee. That's $200 worth of passion fruit.
It's a pretty so yeah, what I sent her, I made passion fruit curd, which is like, it's fairly like labor intensive, right? So like, you have to seed the 40 to 50 passion fruits. You got to scoop out the pulp. You got to strain it. You got to blend it and squeeze it a little bit. And then you got to make the curd, which is like, it's over like indirect heat with the water at really low, so the eggs don't scramble. And so, you know, it's like a labor of love. So it was like, it is a manifestation of like my journey to find the passion fruit, right? This like tenderly cooked passion fruit curd.
So how long have you been waiting to find?
You know, it's funny because my friend who is Brazilian, who I know from college, or her family is Brazilian, and she's Brazilian American. One time I was at their house for Thanksgiving because I went to school in upstate New York, and her family was from Connecticut. My family was from LA, right? So I just went home with her, and we had to, and actually this is like, it's so funny that we're having this conversation, because Galora is like the manifestation of like all of these creatings of community that is what I found so intriguing about it from the outset, right? And so interesting. But her family's Brazilian, and they want to have Thanksgiving, but like Thanksgiving is an American holiday, right? And they are Brazilian. So like at their house, we had like Thanksgiving, but like the stuffing in the turkey was like Brazilian stuffing, and like for dessert we didn't have pumpkin pie, we had passion fruit mousse, and I remembered like how good the passion fruit mousse was, and I was like, I just want more passion fruit, like that's all I want. And so that was like, I had that passion fruit mousse, I don't know, let's see, like 15 years ago, and I still think about it. And so I've always like wanted the passion fruits, but I was like, I'm just not willing to pay that much. I just need to find them. So for me, it was just finding the source, because like it was more like, it's not like I didn't know how to find them. It's that I wasn't willing to pay that crazy price for them, and I was like, that is not a good use of money.
So have you ever paid that crazy price for them?
No, I could, because I refuse on principle, right? I was like, $4 a pound is like more than fair price, because they are extremely prolific in LA on someone's backyard vine. It was like, I know it.
That's awesome.
So like my cheapness,
Oh my God. Okay. But it's again like what we were talking about. It's like the community garden. The you bonding. A white kid from the valley, like meeting Tui Tran from another country, over a food grown in South America.
Right.
Like that. And then your Thanksgiving story. You're having Thanksgiving with a Brazilian family and a modified Thanksgiving meal.
Yeah.
There's nothing more American than that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love it. And it's absolutely, I couldn't be more enthusiastic about that as an analogy. Yeah. People need to make things their own, be themselves, respect the creators and of the original recipe, as well as to infuse their own essence into the food they eat, and it brings everyone together.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I mean, I think it's the other piece that it kind of like that it gets at is by the website not being really fundamentally transactional, but about sharing something. Is like, culture is meant to be shared with other people, or I think under optimal conditions it should be. And it's about me saying like, I have the skill set or something that I want to share with you. Like, do you want to receive it? Right. It's like, and I feel like that's what the website is meant to, under ideal conditions, kind of promote. And what I think is so cool about it, right? Because like, it's so like, what if you have the person who's able to teach Tai Chi to, someone, or like, whatever that thing is, right? It's not necessarily about making the money. It's about them wanting to share a part of their culture with someone else, especially if they're far from home, right? Like, to me, that's like the potential that is so cool about it.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And these are things that you see now on the site. My baby just brought me some Tupperware.
Nice.
You never know what she's going to show up with. She's like a cat. It just goes out and brings you like a dead mouse or something. Hey, you want it back? She's been obsessed with tapas. Tapa, like Spanish. You know what tapas are, right? You're a cook?
Yeah.
And you know what that really means, right?
Liz?
You know what a tapa is?
Yeah.
But do you know what a tapa is?
No.
Yes. This is a
tapa. Oh, yeah, Lid. Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So cool. Anyway, she's been obsessed with them, and she used to get really mad, like if you wouldn't let her have the tapa. She was obsessed with the tapas. Like if you were unlidding anything or relitting something, she was just like, tapa, tapa, tapa. I don't know where this came from. It must be her Spanish side. Because my mom is born in Barcelona, so I don't know why she's just like, give me a tortilla española on a baguette. This is great, dude. It's like we are soul brothers. We see this. I am as grateful, as in awe of the beautiful potential of stories that are coming my way. Every time I hear one, it becomes, the motivation to work that day, and to just not stop until it's as good as it can be, and facilitates those connections in an easier way. We left it open. We didn't plan on a lot of stuff, but human nature, when you take money out of it, it gives them a chance to express themselves. And I think that people started offering services, and it became an intangible. And we've modified our mission to be that you could grow in your house, but if you don't have land, like a lot of people don't, or the know-how, you could bake something in your oven. And everyone's got something that they can make.
Yeah.
But okay, some people don't, or maybe you can't afford it, or maybe you don't have the time. But then Does that mean you're excluded? Because A, you have no land, B, you can't cook, and C, you have no money, so you can't offer anything to those people that are offering.
Right.
And then we saw that people started to use the website to offer their own value.
Yeah.
And when that happened, it changed the direction of the site to a whole new way where everybody and anybody has something to offer. What do you bring to the world? What would you like to share about yourself? Even if it's something as unusual as, let me talk to you about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Let me talk to you about my culture.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows about themselves. I mean, even if you're not a musician, or if you're not a philosopher, or a video editor, or you have something, or a psychologist, you can still be a friend to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And why not?
Yeah.
Why? Because we all need friends and we all need human contact. And so if someone creates a listing, that says, I'll be your friend, I
Yeah.
would be glad to talk to you. Nobody wants anything like, well, what's your rate? Well, how many cookies does it take to have half an hour of your time? Like, obviously the person who's offering that gets more by
Yeah.
giving.
Well, and that's why it's kind of so funny that I mentioned the Thanksgiving story, and I was like, the story that we're fed about American Thanksgiving is about that, like, right, like two people, like strangers helping each other, right? Like that's what Thanksgiving is. Yes, Thanksgiving has a lot of problematic elements, right? But what we're told about what Thanksgiving is about that message, right? And that's about living that message of Thanksgiving every single day, and the spirit of Thanksgiving, and like that is sharing with others, with sharing with your neighbors, and maybe they're neighbors that you didn't know before. Maybe they're neighbors who live in Culver City, even though I live downtown. A neighbor looks different in 2020 than it did in 1620. So
Oh yeah, a trip to downtown was an all-day trek.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going down. Can you come over to see me downtown? Well, if it's on a Sunday, but not a game day,
Yeah.
between 1 and 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and I think that has a lot to do with the way that Galore is being interpreted, because we were under house arrest long before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we are under house arrest by traffic. We are under house arrest because of work. We
Yeah.
are under house arrest because of over extending, over committing to things that didn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
So you weren't available for the things that did matter.
Mm-hmm.
I've traveled the world, and I see that people are sitting with their friends, having sangria, eating tapas until 2 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And it's, and somehow they still work, and,
Yeah.
they still have kids and families, and, but they're happier, they're happier. And so I think that I came back to LA. Every time I go to Europe, I come back and I reach out to my friends because I've gotten high on human contact. And I'm like, I really miss my friends in LA. I want to see them. And then they're all like, sure, I'll schedule you in for, March 17th, 2022,
Yeah.
because the kids are going to be at camp.
Yeah.
And I said, come on, what about today?
Yeah.
What are you doing now? They're like, oh, lots of stuff. You're like, nah, come on. And so I think that we're all stars, and this has been the great reset.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just like, and I think about like my own family and their own spirit of like welcoming people in. I mean, my grandpa was the son of like a Mexican and a Greek immigrant, and like they very much valued hospitality, right? And it's like anyone who comes into your home as a guest, and you feed them until they can't possibly eat anymore, and you insist that they eat more, and you give them everything of your home, and like that is like, and I feel like that is what, like, I don't know, like a made up definition of Galora is like that spirit of kind of hospitality, right? And treating your neighbor that way, and welcoming in people who come to your home. But it's not about your home, it's about sharing a piece of yourself with them, right? Like that's like what it's, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's happening, and it could not have been, less planned.
Yeah.
But the first time I went to see Tui, this is the Tui story, is that she was one of the very first people, I met her on Facebook or on Nextdoor and
Mm-hmm.
somehow convinced her, to list her passion fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And she was, had this beautiful listing and all these fruits, and I was still very much, and I am still very much wanting to learn about the experience, or what trouble they were having posting, or what questions they might have about how it worked, and to be, making sure that the site was better. And so
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go to people's homes
Mm-hmm.
so that I could meet them in person and get so much. And she said, sure, like next Wednesday, in the morning, come on over. And I said, great, okay, cool. So I called her like that Wednesday, and I've been looking forward to it because I had like nobody on the site, and like nobody, I hadn't met anyone.
Yeah.
And so I called her, and it was like, 20 minutes before our appointment. I was like, because I hadn't got her address yet. I think I'd only, like texted, and I was going to get it on the way. And then she's like, oh, hello, Ryan. And I said, hi, Tui, it's Ryan, Xavier, blah, blah, blah. And she says, oh, how do you did not get my message? I'm like, oh, no. And she says, well, I called yesterday and I tell you, I'm not so sure. People come to my house because my garden is a mess, and I don't want two people see it. And I said, Tui, I came all the way to Glendale. I'm already here. I'm a block away. It's a garden. It's not a fashion show. It doesn't matter. No one's going to judge you. And if you want, I'll just stay in front. I don't have to come in. It's just like, okay, all right, if you got to. And I kind of guilted her into it.
Yeah.
So I guilted her into it as nicely as I could. And then when I went over there, she didn't let me leave for like 2 hours,
Nice.
And she's like walking me around the garden and showing me her worms and showing me her basil and her tomatoes and her chayotes. And like, and I walked out of there with like a box full of stuff,
Amazing.
And the next day she was like Galorian #1, like the queen of meet and greets and trades and reaching out to everybody.
Oh, how cool.
And I think and I call it Midas touch, not too humbly, but it's like, because I was there and because I made it okay for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, this is not a threatening experience.
Right.
This is an opportunity to meet new people, and it's an opportunity for you to be yourself and share the things that you love, all without saying.
Right.
She became the essence of Galora.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's so cool.
And nobody who starts these exchanges knows where it's going to go. When you reached out to her and offered her money for her passion fruit, she had no idea that you would bring her creme brulee.
Yeah.
And she's so happy about that. You made her day. And now she has a story.
Yeah.
And stories are what makes culture, right?
Yeah.
So she's going to go and tell this story every opportunity she has.
Yeah.
And it makes her more human. It makes her more connected. It gives her value. And what was the last time you went to Ralph's and spent $5 on a passion fruit and left with a story that was good?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Instead of how pissed off you are that you got ripped off.
Right.
And they're all shriveled up, and I mean, that's a $200 creme brulee. No wonder they're so expensive when you buy them, right?
Yeah, it's funny because when you had mentioned Galora about like basically like using a platform and removing a profit motivation, I think that like I am on the other side of that, right? Because I work in a not-for-profit space. And I'm constantly like, I wish we had better technology infrastructure, right? But we don't, because community-based organizations just, by and large, like they pay their staff like $30,000, like they do not have a tech infrastructure, right? Like they simply cannot pay those wages. And so everything we do has like people who are so great at the content, but like so not of the modern age, right? Like, and we don't have the way of like delivering it to meet people where they are in 2020. And like, that's the piece that I'm trying to get my agency to think about a little bit more, is like, we have all this money meant to serve the public good. And but what we need to do is recognize that, like, okay, our goal is around the parents of children age 0 to 5. Like, those parents are the people using Galora. And those people are the people who are on, like TikTok. Like, they're not the people who we're reaching in these really old fashioned kind of modalities. But we just don't have the tech vision there. It's just not common in that space. And like, I want to figure out how we can better, like, and Galore is like the perfect example of like the way that you create community around our issue areas is by bringing people together in these informal, not high stakes, not academic ways, but by kind of meeting them where they are. And so, but like I said, we are a government agency. It's, slow to turn those wheels, but, I'm trying to use that sphere of influence that I have in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's like, it's hard to do it on purpose.
Yeah.
It's like your motives, your dedication are pure, but the system is corrupt. There's a lot of money. There's mechanisms, like you said, there's, you have to do budgeting and accounting and,
Yeah. And I mean, and the thing is like, the reality is that people who are motivated by public service don't go in it for the money, right? But a lot of people who are app developers, like, they got that skill because they knew that they would get a lucrative job. And quite frankly, they're not going to take a $40,000 a year job when they got a $250,000 a year job. And so we don't get that kind of innovation from people, just generally speaking, because tech typically has a profit motivation. And like, this is more of like a philosophical thing, but like, it makes it very hard for us to modernize as well, because there's not a nonprofit equivalent of like the tech space doing social good work without introducing like and then we're going to take all your data and sell it. And like, unfortunately, and like, we are public service, so we have to protect the public interest. And when you tell a tech platform, like, you can't monetize this to holy hell, it's a non-starter, right? Like, that's the end of the conversation typically. And so it's an area where I think there's so much opportunity in philanthropy and government, but just doesn't really exist. And I think it's largely also generational, like, people my age are not leading the agencies at this point. And so they just have a very different, lens.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think that a lot of people in the early days were asking me, so are you a nonprofit, or where do your volunteers come from? And it almost seemed like in order to do good, everyone expected you to be set up that way.
Yeah.
And so I almost felt in the beginning like, oh, I'm not going to get any legitimacy. I'm not going to get any buy-in.
Yeah.
If I have a .com, and I think it's, I think I'm mostly not worried about that now.
Right.
In the beginning, there were people, in your sphere, who do have, volunteer systems and networks and, government funding, and have, now she brought me a Swiffer. This conversation is going to keep getting more interesting. So
keeping it clean.
Yeah, she's got tops and Swiffers. I love it. We just basically let her do whatever she wants. Just walks around sticking Swiffers in people's faces. She's awesome. And so it's interesting, an interesting conversation. I think that I was getting approached by people who were like, oh, this seems like sort of a philanthropic activity you're doing here. And so what's your setup? And are you tax-free? And I was just kind of unprepared for the question. And I started to get worried that, maybe nobody would trust us if we maybe had some plan to monetize it. But honestly, at this point in time, I don't think it matters very much, because as long as the mission isn't corrupted, and as long as I can keep the basic functionality the same, if it does generate money, and a lot of that money, those resources are pumped back into making it even more broadcast, even more relatable, then it does good. It's like, so why can't it? Like you said, it's like, why should we be pushing out profit, if that profit can be channeled towards good. And so I really do think that it's all right. If a few ads pop up in this, 6 months or a year from now, but the main mission of the site is to still weave this tapestry of oneness and bring people together in new novel ways, then, and it allows it to exist, it's a necessary evil, but also could potentially allow it to be more broadcast and even more relevant.
Yeah.
And so that, that's where I am, that's where and then be able to hire really good people, like you said, it's like, if I have to pay some really good programmer $250,000 a year to make the world's best sharing site, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
And even better, they'll be so motivated to do it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is like, you can and I think that's the thing about, whether or not establishing, nonprofit status or whatever. I mean, it has implications in regards to if you ever want to partner with other people, but I also think, I mean, there's just so much potential there if you have like mission-driven people, but in a tech space. That is something that is just not very common. But so like I said, in our space, we have all those mission-driven people. We just don't have the digital infrastructure, right, to maximize our work. And for me, that's where I'm trying to get my organization to realize a little bit more, and that like you said, creating community is like the way that we move the needle on the changes that we want to see, right? And this is like a very, I guess, kind of harsh example, but you talked about telling the story of the passion fruit, but George Floyd was also the story, right? The story that mobilized tens of thousands of people who saw that story and said oh my God, something's really, really, really wrong. And that was also a story that brought together community. Yes, it was a really tragic, horrifying story, but it also has changed the world in a very, very short period of time. You're on mute.
Yeah, can you repeat which story was it that was so horrifying? The George Floyd, is that what you said? Yeah, exactly. It's true. And so really good stories can mobilize people as well. And so I need my idea with the documentaries is to log as many of them, and hopefully they will be as diverse as possible and include people from all different walks of life, and maybe even in different languages. And LA is certainly not not bereft of diversity in that sense. So if some of the interviews are with women and men and people of different ethnic, gender, economic, cultural backgrounds, even in different languages, the movie should be, right, that, consummation of the concept and of the diversity that we represent. So that's my goal, to get as many people involved as possible. So maybe I'll tell Tui to do it in Vietnamese,
Yeah, totally. I mean, because that's the thing.
I'll just have to nod.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is our exchange could have happened and occurred, and that community could have been built whether or not she spoke my language. That was the cool thing about it, right?
Absolutely. And right now, Chris, our developer, is working on the first translation. The very first that allows automatic translation. So if somebody creates a listing in Spanish, it will be legible, to others, if not, discombobulated a little bit, enough to be able to capture the concept and the gist of what's being offered, and then reach out to that person. So what a bridge you're making, because what was the last time you reached out to somebody who you knew wouldn't understand your language, and to feel that message would be understood and appreciated in the way that you sent it.
Yeah.
So that's happening, and it's a first of, I hope, many. It's already happening. People are already creating listings in Spanish, and they might not even have that great a grip of English. So maybe they struggled with.
Well, it's fine too, because you think, and you're like, well, what if people use Galora to be like, I need to communicate with someone who speaks Spanish. Can I have someone who speaks Spanish and help me translate? You could use Galora to broker that transaction. There are a lot of first generation children of immigrants who speak the native language and are fluent in English and can provide that without you. We know that a lot of families in LA need that resource but don't have the financial resources to do it. If someone could be there for them, like that is how you leverage community, right? To actually make a meaningful change in people's lives. Like there's so much there that we just haven't figured out how to tap into. And I feel like technology is the right way to do it in a world that is becoming increasingly online.
Yeah, and it has to be more democratic. You know, it has to be more widely available. You know, so if somebody does what you said and creates a listing for, you know, for Vietnamese translation, you know, that creates an incredible connection, and maybe they're trading their Vietnamese translation skills for Filipino lumpia.
Yeah.
And how awesome is that? You know,
Yeah.
because she has enough money to buy some, you know, phyllo dough and some vegetables and make an amazing recipe her grandmother taught her, you know, back in the Philippines.
Yeah.
How awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
And your idea, like, I hadn't thought of it, like nobody had mentioned it yet.
Yeah.
But that is the kind of iterations and the kind of evolutions that makes this thing so freaking like unwieldy and limitless in its potential.
Yeah.
And it's thrilling. It's really, really exciting.
Yeah.
So cool. I guess we'll stop, and I will have do a schedule. Like, how is Monday or Tuesday? Is that okay for you? I still would like to do it in person, even though this has been just fantastic.
Let me see. Monday is not good.
Okay.
Tuesday is fine.
Tuesday look better?
Tuesday is good if we could do after 2.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. Let's see. Olvera Street is fun.
Yeah.
And not far from you.
No, very
you taking the metro? You walk? You ride? What do you do?
I'll probably ride or walk.
Ride or walk. Let's see.
But I can meet you wherever I have a car.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think of somewhere that'd be fun, you know, and quiet. There's probably still a lot of people like in Little Tokyo. I like the multi-ethnic concept, you know, like like maybe Olvera Street's good. You could probably find a quiet corner, and it's historic, and it's, you know, sort of a symbolic kind of a place. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'll clarify the time with you, but anything after 2 is working for you?
Anything after, wait, what day was it? Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah, anything after 2.
Great. Awesome. Okay, cool. That's awesome, man. I've loved talking to you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, great to talk to you too, Ryan. Good luck.
Yeah. All right, I'll see you on Tuesday, and I'll clarify by message.
Yeah, sounds good. Bye.
Yeah, take care. Have a good day.